not the type at all. You'd meet him on the street and never notice him. His form and face, his manly grace, is not the kind that you would find in a statue. Oh, I can't explain. It's surely not his brain that makes me thrill. I love him because he's wonderful, because he's just my Bill. I used to dream that I would discover the perfect lover someday. I knew I'd recognize him if ever he came round my way. I always used to fancy then he'd be one of the godlike kind of men, with a giant brain and a noble head, like the heroes born in the books I've read. But along came Bill, an ordinary guy. He hasn't got a thing that I can brag about, and yet to be upon his knee, so comfy and roomy, feels natural to me. Oh, I can't explain. It's surely not his brain that makes me thrill. I love him because he's, I don't know, because he's just
Favourite daughter-in-law, Kim. Loved grandfather of our 7 grandchildren, Alexander, James, Victoria, Taj, Kai, Sasha and Dylan, and great-granddaughter, Ellie Morgan. A huge thank you to our children, Ingie in Cape Town, and Ian and Kim, who flew home from Dubai, and Karen, who flew home from Auckland, without whom I simply would not have coped. To Karen, Ian and Kim and Ingrid for all their help in reorganizing my life, sorting out my finances, and for all their support and love. Also a big thank you to our grandchildren, who were a huge support and comfort to me while I was in ICU and trying to come to terms with what had happened. Thank you, Victoria, who was with me on a daily basis and who's still with me and still helping me and loving me. To Sasha for her love and caring, and to Dylan, who gave up his bedroom for me when I eventually got out of hospital. To James, who flew back to Cape Town from the Kalahari to be with me. And to Alexander, Layla, Taj and Kai, who were in constant contact with me and who were too far away to come home. Thank you to Mike and Lee and to Beck's Captain Russell for their help and support. We really appreciate it, and I know that you're always there for me. After me and our family, Law was Kingsley's other love, and Beck's Captain Russell, afforded him the platform to continue practicing law and serving his community right until the very end. Kingsley was a lawyer right up to his last breath. One of the last things that he said was that the accident was not the Uber driver's fault. Thank you to Alan Parsons, an old Selbornian friend of many years, for his tremendous help. Alan, we could not have coped without you and your help. Alan is doing the live streaming for us today so that our far-flung family can be with us and can share this farewell. Thank you, Alan. An enormous thank you to Dr. Sean Rogers, another old Selbornian who looked after me so well and who also helped and cared for my children. Sean, we will never forget your incredible care and kindness. I don't think that I would have made it without you. Our close link with these two old Selbornians has carried us through this tragic loss. I have something I just want to read from Sean. Sorry, I forgot that I needed my phone, so just give me a second. This message came through this morning, and Beth just wanted us to read it at this point. Dear Auntie E, Ingrid, Karen, Ian, grandchildren, and Uncle Kingsley, today, as sure as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, there will be another dawn. Life on Mother Earth, our place we call home, has a finite duration, as we are mere mortals. This place we call home is just that, with a defined length of time. Our memories last forever, and I'm sure that within the Kingon family there are many such memories. Treasure them and all that Uncle K taught you all. Hambagashle Tamkulu, Palma Vatuti, stay safe. And then to conclude the thanks to our incredible friends, too many to mention individually, family and Betty, Kingsley's sister, who have supported us with love, kindness, friendship and meals. A huge thank you. Thank you, Lynn, for the beautiful silver memorial plaque that you have put up for Kingsley at Sculptures. You are so special. Ingi, to you, an enormous thank you for everything that you are to me, for taking everything over from Karen, Ian and Kim when they had to leave. I simply could not have got this far without your incredible love and support. From rushing to the accident, coming in the ambulance with us and not leaving me for a second, I think in pajamas, until Ian, Kim and Karen could get to me in Cape Town, for looking after me when I was finally allowed out of hospital, and then for driving me all the way home, and now still staying with me when I try to readjust to life without my beloved Kiki. Thank you, Ings. There's a quick extract that I just would like to read from the book Fahrenheit 451. Kings was a reader and I thought it was appropriate. Everyone must leave something behind when he dies, my grandfather said. A child or a book or a painting or a house or a wall built or a pair of shoes made or a garden planted, something your hand touched some way so that your soul has somewhere to go when you die. And when people look at that tree or that flower you planted, you're there. It doesn't matter what you do, he said, so long as you change something from the way it was before you touched it into something that's like you after you take your hands away. Kingsley touched and changed many lives, as we will hear today. The first 6 speakers will share on various aspects of Kingsley's life. This will be followed by a recorded message from those family members who can't be here today, and we'll conclude with messages from family members present, and we'll close with a message from Beth. I'd like to call on Mr. Mike Francis to come up. He is the Senior Director at Bax Kaplan Russell Inc., and Kingsley and Mike worked closely together with each other at the firm.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by saying what a privilege and honor it is, not only for me, but also for Bax Kaplan Russell, to have been asked by the Kingon family to play a part in this celebration. I've been requested to speak about Kingsley the lawyer. Given that he had a career spanning 65 years, this is no easy task. I trust that I can do it justice. Firstly, the facts. For this, mainly thank you to Beth. Kingsley matriculated from Selborne College in 1951 and became articled to the firm Norton, Gale and Kingon. That firm consisted of Pompey Norton, his son Norman, and Tubby Gale. Whilst articled, Kingsley studied at night for his law degree. He was admitted as an attorney on the 13th of April 1957. To put that into perspective, he was admitted 2 years after I was born. He was admitted as a partner, and the firm became Norton, Gale and Kingon. When Tubby Gale retired, Kingsley was approached by his long friend Dennis Kirk to join an amalgamation of 3 firms: Norton, Gale and Kingon, Adelson, Kirk and Moorman, and Randall and Bax. The name of the new firm was the Bax Partnership, with Ken Bax as the senior partner. When Ken retired, Dennis Kirk became senior partner, and when he retired, Kingsley took over the position which he held until his compulsory retirement age, when George Woolman took over and Kingsley became a consultant. That was in the year 2000. He remained a consultant for 27 years until his tragic death. I met Kingsley when I moved to East London as a young attorney in 1979. All of us youngsters were in awe of his unbelievable knowledge of all aspects of company law, commercial law and property law. I soon learned that if you had to call Kingsley, you needed to be prepared and keep it short. And your call would be answered by Kingon. Now that was the start of the conversation. He taught me many a painful lesson as a young attorney. In 2003, the Bax Partnership amalgamated with Marshall Kaplan to form Bax Kaplan. I then had the privilege of working with Kingsley and could appreciate firsthand his amazing skills. He had honed those skills in combat the finest commercial lawyers produced in East London. I think back to the likes of Edwin Abdo, John Vermaak, Angus McClelland, Paul Chubb, and Eben Lewis Kaplan. When Kingsley passed, it was the end of a golden era. Those who in his later years underestimated Kingsley because of his advanced years did so at their peril. At the time of his death at 87, he was as sharp as ever and still practicing at a high level. I know this because I inherited his files, and many involved complexities way beyond my pay grade. This is how I will always remember him: energetic, enthusiastic, and full of vitality. I think for me a few things stood out. Firstly, his unique drafting skills. After lengthy and complex negotiations in a matter, he would produce an agreement that was simple, logical, and recorded precisely the agreement reached. He was commonly known as the formula man. Most agreements, for the sake of extra clarity, contain an arithmetical formula. If I was struggling to articulate something in an agreement, I would refer to Kingsley, and in a flash, he had a formula which was simple and perfectly explained my problem. Secondly, his energy levels and his continued thirst for knowledge. Never afraid to take on a new challenge. I recall when the Consumer Protection Act was promulgated, we all groaned at the prospect of coming to grips with a new piece of legislation. Not Kingsley. He was the first to put up his hand to attend the Law Society seminar, which he did, and then reported back to us on all aspects, and soon became our expert on CPA. He attended every seminar and always asked probing questions of the presenter. I remember many a senior presenter being very uncomfortable with Kingsley in the room. Thirdly, his knowledge and speciality in all aspects of tax, be it estate duty, transfer duty, CGT, VAT, or income tax. He regularly received calls from senior chartered accountants seeking advice. One of them is here, Mr. Steve Bruce. His general knowledge was legendary. He always won the trivia quiz at our Christmas parties. My wife Lee used to run the quiz games, and he always had the answer before Lee had even finished the question. And then his amazing relationship with his clients. His client base consisted mainly of some of the top businessmen in East London, many of whom are here today. The level of confidence and trust in him ensured that he acted for many of them in excess of 40 years. I've learned that for many of them, he became more than a trusted legal counsel. He also became a close friend. The sheer volume of messages of condolences which we received from both clients and colleagues was overwhelming and a fitting tribute to the man. I also, however, remember how irritated he would get if he was consulted by a client who had already signed a poorly drafted contract or had made a poor decision. He would let them know in no uncertain terms that he suffered fools badly. I admired the way that he embraced technology. Many colleagues of his generation did not keep up with the changes that technology brought into our profession. The advent of fax, then email, WhatsApp, voicemail, online communication, he quickly mastered them all, and he regularly produced his own agreements and correspondence himself. He was equally loved by the staff that he worked with, and so enjoyed regaling them with his jokes and his wacky sense of humour. No holy cows with Kingsley. I also remember and so appreciate the support which he gave me personally in my practice, which allowed me to get on with doing what I do best. He always had my back. Lee and I could head off on leave knowing that Kingsley was in charge. I still miss him every day. Beth and Kingsley and Lee and I have a common love of the British TV program Strictly Come Dancing. And he would remind us at the start of each new season, and then we would have regular discussions about our favourite couples. I also remember how he scoffed at the need for physical exercise. He said it was totally unnecessary, and he got enough exercise as a pallbearer at his mate's funerals. Despite this, he was always extremely fit and active and took the stairs 2 at a time. And then finally, his love of Beth. Beth was married to her beloved Kiki for 61 years and was his PA and right hand for 41 years. They worked incredibly well as a team to the end. What a privilege to have done that. They would arrive each day holding hands and leave the same way. A true example, particularly to our young staff. Kingsley was the finest commercial attorney that I ever worked with or against. He gave his entire life to the practice of law and the firms he worked for. Bax Kaplan and then Bax Kaplan Russell were so lucky to have him on board for 18 years. He will be sorely missed. We and the legal fraternity of East London as a whole have lost an amazing colleague and a loyal and true friend. May he rest in peace. Thank you.
I'd like to call on Mr. Luke Baisley. He's a member of the Rotary Club of East London and a very close friend of Kingsley and Beth.
Good morning. What a lovely talk there. Mike, thank you very much. No pressure then. Good morning, everybody. How does one ever do justice to the giant that is Kingsley John Kingon? Well, the truth is one actually can't. The best we can do, missed the catch. The best we can do is remember him as he would want us to. And so, as I mentioned small parts of his very large life, I would ask you all to just let your minds wander into the many empty spaces that would have been filled by Kingsley in your past, and just remember those happy memories, and it will make us all feel better. Thank you very much. It is what Kingsley would want us to do. It is today my privilege to be representing Rotary International, and in particular the Rotary Club of East London and its members past and present. Rotary was a huge chapter in Kingsley's life. He was quite some Rotarian, and his contributions have been long and numerous. He joined the Rotary Club of East London in 1985 and got stuck in straight away. I'll do the arithmetic. That's 36 years. 36 years of serving the club and the community. He was awarded a Paul Harris Fellow in 1997, and for information, a Paul Harris Fellow is the highest award that Rotary International, through their club, can bestow on a person. Clearly Kingsley was making big waves from early on. Kingsley was selected to be president of the club for the year of 1999 to 2000, and those who were there tell me that it was a superb year. In 2006, he was awarded a sapphire to go with the Paul Harris Fellow. That's when you are equally deserving a second time around. And then a double sapphire in 2015. That's quite some spread of service. This is special and a testimony to his belief in the Rotary motto of service above self. And just by the way, Beth is a Paul Harris Fellow and a sapphire also. It's a Kingon thing. Kingsley's great love was the Buffalo Tidings, the club newsletter, which he almost turned into a newspaper. He was the scribe for more years than he cared to remember. And in days gone by, there was a competition amongst the clubs as to who had, the Rotary clubs that is, as to who had the best newsletter. Well, the Rotary Club of East London won this award on many occasions. And when we didn't, Kingsley wanted to know why and see what his competition had done. And woe betide the district governor who didn't have an adequate answer. His services to the club and Rotary were many and varied, and I cannot list them all. Perhaps his other favourite was the youth. Rotary is very involved in youth, and Kingsley was right up there. He told me he was selected to be the chaperone of the Rotary Exchange students going to America. He and Beth accompanied them all the way there and made sure that their little chickens were delivered safely. He will, however, be best remembered for having fun and being involved in everything remotely resembling a party. He and Beth were first in line for any gathering or trip, and you could always pencil them in. This included trips to Addo and Mountain Zebra National Parks, to Grahamstown, Port Elizabeth and Maseru Rotary districts, among many others, even a fellowship exchange to Madagascar. You couldn't keep them at home. Being among friends is what they do best. He was a staunch member of the Andes. Now, the Rotary Club of East London is the only club in the world, I think, that has got an Andes section. And how it came about was that the Anns of the Rotary Club of East London, Anns are the wives and partners of the Rotarians. They're a wonderfully active group of people, and they do absolutely amazing things. And they meet once a month. So the husbands thought, well, why not? And so we began meeting once a month, and we became the Andes. The big difference between the Anns is that they actually get things done. A more useless bunch you wouldn't wish to find is the Andes. Nothing is achieved. Most useful subjects are banned. Wine is consumed in various quantities, and they are men's brides. None of this salad nonsense. Although that's the way it was, it's changed a bit since. As you can imagine, Kingsley was a founder member. He'll be remembered, as Mike said, for his special brand of humour. He loved to play on words, and the cornier the joke, the better. The more abuse he got, the more he liked the joke. And he loved his own jokes. He will be forever the yardstick against which corny jokes will be measured, and it will be a long time before the champion is unseated. I think we should all learn some lessons from this whole horrible episode. It is what our friend Kingsley would want us to do. And these are that life is short, and there is no guarantee of tomorrow. Enjoy today. Love your family and tell them so often. Don't waste time on the silly stuff. It's not important. And lastly, make every day count. I draw your attention to that wonderful Rotary creed of service above self, and Kingsley practiced it always. His last earthly deed, and at a time when he must have been in significant discomfort, was to see his dear Beth carefully and safely to proper medical care. That is service above self in capital letters, and it is exactly the kind of thing that Kingsley would do. So, my friend, go well. We miss you.
Thank you, Luke. May I call on Mr. Owen Null? Mr. Null is chairman of the Carl du Toit Centre, where Kingsley was a trustee. The Carl du Toit Centre is where they teach deaf children to talk, and this was a charity that Kingsley served for a very long time.
Dear Beth, Ingrid, Betty, Corin, Ian and Kim and families, although I've been asked to talk on behalf of the Carl du Toit Trust, where Kingsley served as a most valued trustee and legal advisor, I thought I would take the liberty of sharing some of my memories of Kingsley as a cousin. His grandfather and my grandmother were brother and sister. So I've known Kingsley all my life, from the time when he was a tall, lanky Selborne matric pupil and I was an inquisitive 3-year-old. My mother was very close to her Stickles cousins, and we were regular visitors to the Stickles family farm in Amalinda, in the area now known as Saxelby. In fact, in that area is a street named after our grandfather. Later I recall Kingsley being an energetic young attorney, a force to be reckoned with, as Mike Francis has indicated, in the courtroom, and also politically active in the Liberal Party of the 50s and 60s. I remember accompanying my parents to Kingsley and Beth's wedding, a long time ago. And later, much later, I was Ian's science teacher at Selborne. By the time I was appointed headmaster at Clarendon, Corin, Ingrid had joined Beth as very active members of the Old Girls Guild. And the annual Old Girls Dinner was a function that Kingsley and Beth seldom missed. Occasionally, Kingsley and I would be the only males present. I think he felt more comfortable in that situation than I did. In our family and extended family, Kingsley was always the go-to guy for all legal matters, anti-nuptial contracts, wills, property transfers, and estates. The generous family discount was not the main reason for us calling on Kingsley. The assurance that his astute legal knowledge and vast experience would ensure that the resulting documents would be perfect and beyond reproach, unquestionably legally sound, and most importantly, easy to understand. So when a vacancy on the Carl du Toit Trust arose in 2008, Michelle and I had no hesitation in proposing that Kingsley should be invited to join the Trust. He joined us at a crucial time when our relationship with the founders of the East London Trust, East London Carl du Toit Trust, was being reviewed, and the casual arrangement of financial and academic support of our centre by the Cape Town Coral du Toit Trust had to be formally circumscribed, and Kingsley produced a thoroughly well-constructed memorandum of understanding that ensures our continued existence as an NPO, preparing preschool deaf children for admission to mainstream schools through having acquired spoken language with the assistance of hearing aids and cochlear implants. As has been indicated, Kingsley was always critical of verbosity and unnecessarily complicated legal jargon. He volunteered to redraft the constitution of our trust, which was a very hefty document. Excuse me saying, but we used to refer to it as a Stellenbosch document. Those in the legal profession probably know what I mean by that. It was a document of more than 100 pages. Kingsley's new trust document is about 30 pages long. Precise, succinct, no legalese. It's written in plain English. He once told me that attorneys charge per page when drafting a contract. He was certainly not one of those attorneys. We will miss Kingsley's input at our meetings. We will miss his sense of humour. Not much, but we will miss it. His searching questions, his directness, his guidance, and his compassion. And we will remember him and continue to heed his advice. Rest in peace, dear cousin. I thank you.
I'd like to call on Barbara Bryceland. Barbara is the CEO of the Donald Woods Foundation in South Africa. Kingsley was chairman of this foundation for some years.
Most of you here today are more than aware of Kingsley's involvement in the legal Rotary and obviously the Coral du Toit world. But a lot of you may not be aware of Kingsley's involvement with the Donald Woods Foundation. The Donald Woods Foundation, and I'll just refer to it as the DWF for ease, is a registered charity and NGO. It's registered as a charity in the United Kingdom, and all the work is done here in the Eastern Cape. The Kingon family was very involved in the lives of Donald and Wendy Woods. Their 5 children, so much that Donald is Karen's godfather, if I'm not mistaken. So when the Woods family left South Africa, and after Donald died, a trust was formed in honour of their parents, Donald and Wendy. And this is where Kingsley comes in. The foundation in South Africa was established under the legal guidance of Kingsley, and by virtue of his natural link to the family and his affinity with the foundation's mission, was elected to the Board of Trustees as our chairman. He was instrumental in the registration process and the growth of the foundation right from the outset. The foundation achieved great things under his leadership. It's based up in the Mbashi district of the Eastern Cape. And Kingsley was passionately interested in the program work of the foundation, which he witnessed firsthand from travelling up to Hobeni and staying at the Donald Woods Centre with us all. Once the foundation was registered and up and running, Kingsley served as its chair for 12 years. He presided over meetings with great pride and efficiency, always seated at the head of the table at number 61 Chamberlain Road, where his good friend Donald and Wendy used to reside. He always used to walk up those stairs, and he always used to say to me, "It is just so nice that the Donald Woods Foundation is based right here at number 61 Chamberlain Road." Under Kingsley's chairman, the foundation grew from employing 6 people to 200. Kingsley's legal and general advice helped the foundation grow to become one of the most successful HIV/TB programs and primary healthcare NGOs in South Africa. The foundation built 15 rural clinics, screened and tested over 300 1,000 people for TB and HIV, built a 15 million rand training campus up at Hobeni, which enabled many training programs and workshops to take place to uplift the community. It was always Kingsley's input. He had a great thing of wanting to educate the downtrodden, and so the education part of the foundation, as opposed to the health side, was always sort of a pet thing of Kingsley's at our meeting. It was no mean feat for Kingsley to keep abreast of all this activity, and that he most certainly did. His input was never underestimated. His calmness when calamities arose, his humour and youthful approach to matters arising guided the South African Board of Trustees along its way. Our meetings were kept short and to the point, as Owen has mentioned as well. And they were always interspersed with Kingsley's wit and his wonderful, wonderful command of the English language. He also brought a very lively approach to chairing our meetings, and sometimes included a little bit of forgetfulness. As diligent as Kingsley was about his legal duties and responsibilities, he had two faults. The first was his dislike of acronyms. Now, if you think the South African government has got an acronyms, he's trying working for an NGO, because boy, do we have them. And he would arrive at these meetings and he would say, Barbara, any new acronyms that I need to know about? I said, no, it's fine, so will be explained to you. And he kind of looked at me with raised eyebrows. His other fault was that he never, ever read the agenda. As in, never. So prior to the meetings, Dylan and I would always send him all the gumph, the minutes of the previous meeting, the financial reports, and the this, and the progress reports, and this kind of stuff, which he read, but not the agenda. And his whole reason was, we never stick to the agenda anyway. We keep the agenda, let's stick to it. So he said it's just a waste of time, absolute waste of time to read the agenda. Okay, that's fine. So, one day, preparing the meetings for a meeting, papers for a meeting, Dylan and I, when I refer to Dylan, I refer to Dylan Woods, our CEO. I'm the general manager, not the CEO. We just decided to set Kingsley up a little bit. So, hidden down lower on the agenda, which Kingsley would only notice and read up when it came to that session of the meeting, we inserted the item, Kingsley to report on the BAI prior to legal action. So, when the item came up, we all turned to Kingsley and we waited. And we waited, and we waited. Time passed slowly. Suddenly Kingsley, rather surreptitiously, started scrubbing through his thick DWF file, which was like this, muttering under his breath and quietly getting hot under his collar. He suddenly just sat bolt upright in his chair and with confusion and guilt written all over his face declared, guys, I'm sorry, but I've absolutely no idea what BAI is or what I'm supposed to have done about it. So we all just like, anyway, we also tried to keep a straight face, which was tricky. And we just then burst out laughing and revealed that BAI simply stood for bogus agenda item. Anyway, for once we had outwitted the master of wit. And I think from then on, he actually did read the agenda. Not too sure. There were times when the shoe was on the other foot, and Kingsley would interrogate Dylan and me on agenda items, wanting all the small details so they could keep abreast of this foundation, this huge 100 million rand foundation, which he was the chair. Kingsley's razor-sharp mind kept us on our toes. Everything had to make sense, be in the right place, and be correct. Only then did we have a happy chairman. To have had 12 years of Kingsley serving as the chair of DWF South Africa was a privilege and honour that any NGO should envy. His involvement never faltered. He kept his eye on the ball all the times, and it was always to him that I, as general manager, turned to for advice. I thought even Steve Bruce, when I had meetings with him as our accountant, Steve would always say, if you check with Kingsley, had you asked Kingsley? Yes, Steve, we can. First time Kingsley and Beth visited the Donaldwood Centre in Hobeni, both were overcome with the emotion of the legend their friends Donald and Wendy had left. In the main courtyard of the beautiful Hobeni campus, I witnessed Kingsley and Beth sitting, hand in hand as always, under a 50-year-old lemon tree, tears streaming down their faces as they remember times gone by when two families, the Kingons and the Woods, were united in a fight against the wrongdoings in our country. Two very brave and courageous families. It was very apt Kingsley be the chair of this legacy. There are many unsung heroes among us, men and women who quietly go about the business of helping others. Kingsley was one of these people, and I'd like to include Beth as among those unsung heroes. She stood by her beloved Kiki during some very tumultuous times. Friends and family alike, we could all be so proud of Kingsley. He was a legend among legends, a man among men. He stood for what he believed in: truth, justice, and equality. The Don Woods Foundation benefited greatly from this over the years. And so, on behalf of the Right Honourable Peter Hayne, Chair of the Don Woods Foundation, United Kingdom, Dr. Mary Khalili, the Acting Chair of the DW South Africa, the CEO, Don Woods, Dylan Woods, and both boards of trustees, both here and in London, we are truly saddened by Kingsley's untimely passing. On a slightly personal basis, I arrived in East London exactly 40 years ago, and the first people to welcome me to the city were Beth and Kingsley. We'd gone to Dave's kitchen for supper. We were walking upstairs where the steakhouse was, and I was introduced to them, and Kingsley and Beth, in their usual way, just opened their arms and said, "Welcome to East London." And I thank you for that.
I'd like to call on Mr. Terry Brassland, a very close friend of Kingsley and Beth for 60 years.
So good to see so many faces that I've seen so often, but always at a distance. How marvellous to see you. It's more than just good. What we had to encounter is the sadness. The sadness cannot just be dismissed. But we've got to take the leap. We can try to reduce the load of recalling the lighter moments. I enjoyed, even sometimes endured, times with Kingsley Kingon and Donald Woods, and this took a lot of strength at times, because they are tumultuous. They're like a riot let loose in a confined room, not easy to control. Let me take you back to the days when we were, I suppose, at our peak. At our peak in terms of activism, at our peak in terms of the meeting. Our phones were all tapped. Kingsley's phone was tapped at the office and at home. My phone was tapped at home and at the office. Phones into the office were tapped. My mail was open. Kingsley's mail was open. Donald's mail was opened and carelessly put together again. Absolutely recklessly put together again, because there was no one to call any kind of stop to all this. Houses were raided at night. I can't recall if Kingsley's was raided, but I was raided quite regularly at 2 o'clock in the morning, which was a very difficult time to hold your temper in. Combined with my reputation as a national marksman and hunter, because I didn't ever hunt idly, the temptation to end it all with a volley of shots was always there. We got Donald's phone me one morning to say, "We've got a deputation coming from the security police. There's 4 of them coming." I said, "Call Kingsley, speak to no one, I will be there too." But it took 15 minutes before the security police arrived. And we could not work out what they wanted. All 3 of us have some training at trying to deduce what the target is of whoever it is in front of us, but we were not getting a hit this time at all, because this was like the lion offering a bunch of flowers kind of thing. It wasn't going down well in our reckoning. And they talked on and talked on, and it got a little bit sickening and a little bit sweet. And suddenly it was just too much, because this chap came and said, Kingsley, let me, and Kingsley just get back and he waved his finger, he said, enough. No Kingsley from you. To you I am Mr. Kingon. And that put that, and we set the grounds of our fairly, not violent, but set the grounds for the animosity we retained. Obviously I'm dealing with the lighter things of life. We've seen the real structure of Kingsley's life today before us so excellently. I'm dealing with the bits and pieces on the end of it involving Donald and Kingsley. Now knowing full well that the phones are thoroughly vetted, it was decided by Kingsley and Donald that they would have a nameless phone call discussing the tireless athletic abilities of a female and her inability to say no, and so on, and no names were mentioned. We were very careful because we were in big trouble if we got it wrong. And it was good to note that 48 hours later, one of the security's wives, who we had never met, had a black eye. And Kingsley had some lovely characteristics. Audrey Burmester, John Burmester was an attorney and a friend of Kingsley's. Audrey had a habit of a cheerful homecoming on those evenings when John would come home. And on this occasion, Kingsley wanted to call to see John. He was only about 5, and I see the girls blinking. I think they might remember this. She gave Kingsley this really welcome, very welcome greetings at the door, which of course you couldn't quite see it because the grass was frosted glass, and so one person is not easily distinguishable from another. This was Kingsley, not her husband John, and there was much giggling and a lot of sorting out and explaining to get this right. Kingsley and Donald, yeah, I'll come back to that. Kingsley wanted to go to a meeting of some strange new party who didn't quite know where they positioned themselves. It was at the Cambridge Town Hall. So off we went, quietly suggesting each other that we would listen quietly, absorb the information, and then analyze it later. But the line was so intense, so very, very intense, excuse me, that Kingsley just couldn't handle it. But there was no way we could interrupt the meeting. It was a big meeting. The town hall was full. But at question time, Kingsley was up like a fighting cockney. Asked the questions, tracked the bloke, asked other questions, and he took half of the audience with him, which was quite a thing to do in those days, because the audience was so very often very illiberal, to put it best. And he got a very big cheer from the audience from his attack. One of the other things, right, sorry, Kingsley and Donald played chess. They attacked the problem quite differently. Donald quite clearly wanted to be world chess champion. Kingsley was seeing it as an exercise for his brain, and while he enjoyed it, and passed the evening, all that sort of thing, it never would be taken too very seriously. And this irritated Donald, but he nevertheless tried hard to win. And Kingsley would laugh, because people have stressed it. I cannot stress it strongly enough. The wit of these two guys together, and the need to laugh. We had to laugh because of the times we lived in those days, and the stress. Anyway, enough of that. Incredible coincidences happen in life. It was alluded to earlier that Kingsley was taking a horde of children to a place in America to be entertained there. This was on Frankfurt Airport. And I'm walking along, I'm going to where I'm going to, London or something, and I bumped into Kingsley. So I said, what the hell are you doing here? And Kingsley says, well, I've just lost 20 children. So I look around at all these German policemen around me, and our family lost a lot of people in the war, so I'm not terribly in love with them. And I said, please don't start with a few questions and ask me. I'll just say I've never seen you before. But being invited to dinner at the Kingons was always a great pleasure. Beth, a marvellous hostess and cook, Kingsley full of good cheer, Donald often late to Wendy's extreme irritation, but we always usually got it together. And we always had wonderful, wonderful dinners with. I still remember them. I can even give you the menu if you ask me. But what was always very, very apparent at those dinners was Kingsley's high, high appreciation of Beth's capabilities in every sphere, and the clear love each had for the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brasland. May I ask, when anybody speaks, please to keep the mic up close because of the online recording so that people can hear online. I'd like to call on Mr. Simon Kirk. He's the son of Kingsley's best friend, Dennis Kirk. Dennis and Kingsley were partners and friends for many, many years. Simon's also my brother.
Good morning, everyone. To Beth, Corin, Ian, and Ingrid and their families, thank you for asking me to say a few words. It's a privilege to do so. Corin was in my office just before she went back to New Zealand, and she asked for some help with a legal document. She said to me, I've never had to do this before. My dad always read and explained everything. I can only imagine how Bax Kaplan are feeling. We spoke about life and East London. Corin said that Kingsley always said that East London was the centre of the universe. And since I live in East London, this made me feel good and warm. And I thought about that enthusiastic, positive attitude to life that Kingsley had. And if East London was the centre of the universe, then 19 Sinclair Avenue was the centre of East London. And the family at 19 Sinclair Avenue, the centre of that. And when Kingsley started in law at Norton Gale, that was the centre of the legal universe. And later when the Bax Partnership was formed, and then Bax Kaplan, and Kingsley an integral part of it all, then that too was the center of the legal universe. How unique and refreshing that where you are is so relished and appreciated. My first memories of Kingsley were from Morgan Bay. Law brought my dad and Kingsley together as friends. They had many bonds, but their love of Morgan Bay was a big part. I can only imagine the answer you would get from Kingsley if you asked him, apart from Morgan Bay, where would you go on holiday? His retort, there is no apart from Morgan Bay. And he didn't suffer a silly question. Wisdom comes from old, and the wisdom to know that to light a fire, start making a potjie with your family on your first night at Morgan Bay cannot be equalled by any measure, was sage-like and obvious to Kingsley. He was able to exclude the clutter of life and acquisitions from the simple essence of what's most important. My father and Kingsley loved being lawyers. Their debates and arguments were manna to my and Ian's ears, but they also loved being a professional and respecting the ethics and honesty of being in the profession. They relished that. It was all to them. They were so content to be able to stand away from the inherent squalor that is often in business. Apart from the law, there was also spontaneity and enjoyment of life. I can never forget the many times Kingsley would arrive at our caravan and then park home at Morgan Bay. My dad would say, "Kings, how about a drink?" And Kingsley would say, "Twist my rubber arm," and then shout, "Enough, enough." And then would follow that raucous, infectious, and most unique laugh. A husband, father, grandfather, who had all the worldly wisdom and also so blessed with the joy of life, leaves a huge space. To Beth and the family, we share in the grief. The memories are fond, and we will miss him with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. There are some very special people who could not be here today. We will now listen to their recorded messages. The stream will run continuously and we will hear from the following family members. Karen Kingon, Kingsley and Beth's oldest daughter, now in Auckland. Ian Kingon, Kingsley and Beth's only son, who also lives in Auckland. Kim Kingon, Ian's wife and Kingsley's FDIL. Alexander Crossley, Kingsley and Beth's oldest grandchild, who lives in Hong Kong. He's married to Layla, and they are the proud parents of Ellie Morgan, Kingsley and Beth's first great-grandchild. Followed by James Crossley, his brother, Kingsley and Beth's grandson, who is currently in the Kalahari. Then Ian's children, Taj Kingon, Kingsley and Beth's grandchild in Scotland, and Kai Kingon, Kingsley and Beth's grandchild in Auckland. Then Ingi's children, Sasha van den Bart, Kingsley and Beth's grandchild in Cape Town, and Dylan van den Bart, Kingsley and Beth's youngest grandchild, also in Cape Town.
Legend to all of us, but also, as we have discovered in the last 2.5 months, he was a legend to many, many other people too. My dad was my true north, my moral compass. I will never make another important decision with respect to whether something is right or wrong without first thinking, what would Dad do? My dad was honest and honorable and lived his life holding himself to the highest ethics. When he had an insurance claim after a burglary and his very precious camera was stolen, the insurance company paid him out for a higher spec camera. Most people would think that they were lucky, but not Dad. He immediately called the insurance company to tell them that they had paid him too much. Imagine if the world was made up of people like Dad. It would surely be a better place. I feel as if the world shifted on its axis when Dad died, and I'm not sure that it will ever spin smoothly again. But I count my blessings that we had him for 87 years, a truly dedicated father, husband, and grandfather, and he loved the fact that he had become a great-grandfather to Ellie last year. Mom and Dad both loved their grandchildren and loved going to Cape Town for every important function in which they were involved, dancing Eisteddfod's ballet concerts, music concerts, hockey matches, birthday parties, founders' days. They even managed to get to Dubai for some of the desert dwellers' functions. Dad and I played almost 100 online wordsy games against each other. I'm sad that I got busy and distracted and stopped playing. Truthfully, I was getting a bit annoyed that I couldn't beat him. He won 63 of the nearly 100 games we played, and I only won 32. It irritated him because the wordsy dictionary wasn't always right, and sometimes accepted incorrect words and rejected genuine words. The last time we played, it accepted his word muchly. I sent him a WhatsApp asking him, what kind of a word is muchly? And this was his reply. It's a word you use when you are muchly afraid that your daughter will come up with a better word. Muchly fatherly love. I'm proud to be Kingsley Kingon's daughter. I hope I can be half the person he was. I will miss him forever.
Hi, just wanted to say a few words about my dad, and as is befitting, I have opted to do them in rhyme, which is something that he did love to do. The first is the chorus from a Leonard Cohen song called Anthem, and the chorus is, ring the bell that can still ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's where the light gets in. Then I'm going to read a short story from my favorite author, Richard Bortigan, and it's entitled Love. One day, love will die and time will bury it. And then finally, there's just a short poem that I wrote to commemorate my dad's passing and some of the feelings that I've experienced during that. And it's called Scattered and Shattered. Our thoughts are scattered. We have been battered. Our psyches are tattered and our hearts are shattered. But in the end, it's love that mattered. My heart is crushed. This all feels rushed. So many lives you touched. So many people's trust. But it all returns to dust. Your wit, your love, a memory. Your joie de vie was legendary. Your world-renowned serenity, problem solved, your remedy, the greatest dad this century. The raindrops splattered as your ashes are scattered, the death knell clattered, our souls have gathered, but in the end, it's your love that mattered. Goodbye, Dad, I love you.
To our dearest Kiki, today is Wednesday, the 12th of January, and it's the day we have set aside to honor and remember you and formally mourn your passing. The truth is, Kiki, we honor, remember, and mourn your passing in every moment of every day. Kiki, you are inside every crossword, every joke, every maths problem. You are there in any legal setting, or where any rules and how things are done need explaining. You are there in all great thoughts and all great intellect. You are there in all fair and just decisions. You are there every time someone is standing up for what's right. You are there in all acts of service to the community. Your blue eyes are in the sea and in the sky. Your mischievous smile and the twinkle in your eyes is in your grandchildren and in children everywhere. You are inside books and all avid readers. You are inside every loving husband who is romantically holding their wife's hands. You are inside every loving father. Kiki, we miss and love you, and we are blessed to have you around us all the time.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex. I am Kingsley's eldest grandson, and this is a poem I wrote for Kiki. Kiki, don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. Dr. Seuss. Where to begin, oh where to start? An unrivaled mind, a gracious heart. From the start of my life you were always there. I felt your warmth, your love, and your care. You travelled up and down to see us grow. You took us to Spur and said words like chateau. You built me a house when I was first born. Countless memories upon those walls we adorn. You built a castle, a fortress of sorts, a special place to relax and enjoy your sports. To not speak of your wit would surely be remiss, but that's not what comes to mind when I sit and reminisce. I think of your poise, your elegance and grace. I think of how you treated people, the smile on your face. I think of your wisdom, your thoughts and your words, your love for your dogs, despite all the turds. If you search for an example of what a man should be, you'll flip through the dictionary and find the word Kiki. A husband, a father, a true, genuine leader. All of my life you have been my teacher. I look to you for advice, for insight, for knowledge. I'll never forget when you brought me biscuits in college. Believe it or not, I followed you into law. The news of your passing brought me down to the floor. But as some time has now passed and my tears have now eased, I know you'll look back on your life and feel pleased. You walked taller than most through this life and this world. You danced and you skipped as it whirled, as it swirled. You leave behind you on this ball of soils and water a wife, a dog, a son, and 2 beautiful daughters. And much, much more than that I might add. Family and friends who for your life are eternally glad. Your being and the universe are now one and the same. Return to the elements to be forged again. The sands of time are an unstoppable force, but you depart this planet without a drop of remorse. You loved like no other and lived in the moment. No doubt compassion, your greatest component. I know that you're watching, you're listening right now. In our hearts you will live, and that is our vow. Your presence can be felt across time and space. I simply close my eyes and picture your gentle face. And one day, when Ellie is big and she asks, my answer will be simple. Where to begin, oh where to start? And last but not least, to my dearest Gran. You stood beside Kiki almost your entire life. He couldn't have picked a better wife. Everything I've said about Kiki is true, but make no mistake, it's also about you. You are a rock, an anchor, a pillar stood firm. And when darkness appears, all these things you affirm. It's not possible to think of Kiki on his own. For every step he took, he was not alone. You held his hand through many, many years. Now he holds yours, so fight back those tears. Thank you.
Trying to write this little speech has been really tough because how could one person possibly hope to sum up in a small speech the benefits and effect of having Kingsley in your life? I only clicked a few months ago, maybe a year or so, that my middle name is Kingon and that I didn't have a weird unbarreled double-barrel surname and that my name is not James Kingon Crossley, it's James Kingon Crossley. Emphasis on the Kingon. I know that everyone will have amazing things to say about Kiki, so I'll share 3 of my favorite memories. The first being the infamous silicone peeling incident where Kiki shouted at me after catching me picking and peeling the silicone sealant on the pipe outside the kitchen. I felt so betrayed and disheartened when Kiki shouted at me that I took myself off to my room and put a note on the door that read something along the lines of, "Don't come in or leave me alone," but at the end I had written,
And if it's Kiki, piss off. Which still makes me sad and regretful that I ever spoke to him that way, even if I was a child and my harsh words carried no weight against the calm demeanor of the great Kingsley John, and who most likely chuckled to Gran about it that night. My third memory that sums up Gran and Kiki and the lessons they've instilled in Mom and Ian and Ingy and effectively in us is when they came to see my high school jazz band perform at St. George's Cathedral for a fundraiser. But this was different because this would be a rare time that I would sing in public, the first time too. It just so happened that I sang a duet with a friend, and we sang Me and My Shadow. It's not a particularly significant memory, but when I think about the song, the fact that Gran and Kiki were there to see and hear it, and the fact that I have Kingon in my name, and now given what's happened, it kind of feels like the Kingon name is like a shadow. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. The Kingon shadow is always right behind you to watch you sing, or play sport, or come to a valedictory, or a graduation, or a dancing at Stedford, or fly in from around the world when your family needs you. I've never had to deal with the death of a family member, and I know that life isn't fair, but it doesn't feel fair that the great Kingsley John had to be the first to go. But what I do find peace in is the fact that despite only knowing a fraction of the things he did, even from the small amount of time that I knew him for, even I knew he was the great Kingsley John.
Well done, my boy. That was absolutely beautiful.
I love the shadow.
I love the fact that he didn't tell your mom about it.
Despite being a lawyer.
Hi everyone. In memory of Kingsley, my grandfather, I would like to read you all a poem that I really think sat with me in a special place when I think about him and how he lived his life. Not how did he die, but how did he live? Not what did he gain, but what did he give? These are the units to measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of his birth. Nor what was his church, nor what was his creed, but had he befriended those really in need? Was he ever ready with words of good cheer to bring back a smile, to banish a tear? Not what did the sketch in the newspaper say, but how many were sorry when he passed away. To me, Kingsley was someone who really lived his life to the fullest and also just unapologetically as himself. And I think that's something that everyone can take away from him and how he lived his life, and that I ask you all to take away for him and to keep his memory going. Thank you.
Kingsley John Kingon, well to me, and I'm sure a lot of you, he was Kiki. Kiki had many incredible traits, too many to list them all. But to name a few, Kiki was one of the most honourable, fair and just men I will ever meet. But he was also funny and kind, and I'd like to share a little story about his humour and kindness. Looking back many years, I'm not quite sure how old I was, but I was young enough that I had to ask permission if I wanted to eat any of my candy. I was sitting at the kitchen table in Morgan Bay, scoffing down some of my chocolates, hoping against hope my parents wouldn't catch me. And then, as it happens, my parents came and they saw me. My mom or dad asked, I can't remember who. They said, "Who gave you permission to eat your chocolates?" And as they said this, Kiki walked past, and in a laughing voice he said, "I give him permission," making everyone laugh as he walked through the kitchen into the TV room. This memory has stayed with me ever since, as Kiki had made me so happy, not only then, but for the rest of my life. And it saved me from being scolded. Kiki was an amazing man, and one of the people, even now in his passing, I will look up to and admire for the rest of my life. Kiki, we love and admire you forever and always. And now I'll leave you with a short poem that I found. We think about you always, we talk about you still. You have never been forgotten, and you never will. We hold you close within our hearts, and there you will remain, to walk and guide us through our lives until we meet again.
Hi everyone, I'm Sasha and I am Kingsley's granddaughter. I'm also a bit sick, so sorry about my voice. My dear Kiki, I never thought your time would come so soon. I still can understand how we were all eating dinner together the one night, and the next night you were gone. It all feels like a blur, a fever dream, and it feels almost like one day we'll wake up and you'll be back sitting on your side of the sofa with Josh, Kefir milk nearby, and your cryptic crossword balancing on your lap. The time I got to spend with you and Nana, just a few weeks prior to the accident, is something that I will hold in my heart and treasure forever. I loved coming into your office with you while you showed me around and played chess with you and watched the rugby and spoke about all the things that you were so passionate about. I still feel your presence around me, especially when I came back to East London just now in December and found the wrapper from the chocolate that I had bought you when I came originally. Sitting on your desk, it almost felt as if you were right there, typing away at your computer, but I know that you'll never be far, and I'm so grateful that I got to grow up having you by my side. I love you and miss you so much. All my love, the girl on your mouse pad.
Hello everyone, my name is Dylan, I'm Kiki's grandson, and this is my tribute to him. Kiki, Kingsley Grandpa, a man with many names, known to many by his famous birthday cards, smartness, and his hard work as a lawyer. All of us wouldn't be here without him. Kiki was an incredible man. He didn't miss a day of thick milk for decades and worked almost every day of his life. He told me about how he learned to speak Xhosa before English. I was shocked, even after a good amount of times he told me. He checked every Afrikaans oral, not for only me, but I'm sure for many of you. I would be telling a lie if I said he wasn't my hero. He will be missed by many of us. Thank you.
Now we will hear from the final speakers. It's a tribute from Betty Wrensky, Kingsley's sister, and I'm going to read that for Betty. And Betty said, "Go slowly." Tribute to my brother, Kingsley Kingon. This is my tribute to my dear brother, Kingsley Kingon, who passed away on the 21st of October 2021, 5 days after his 87th birthday. Firstly, I want to remind you all that I have known Kingsley longer than any of you. As a toddler, I couldn't pronounce my brother's name, Kingsley, and so his nickname of Kiki came into being, and so it has stuck. Memories of our childhood was great, as living on a small holding in Hammelinda gave us lots of freedom, not like today. We both went to the Hammelinda Primary School, now known as Crew Primary, where we knew all the children in the school. Such happy days. Our upbringing was absolutely perfect, as we had a loving family and so many happy memories, too many to mention. As we all know, he was mentally very sharp, with a sense of humour second to none, and which I shall miss. Visits to Kingsley and Beth were always full of laughs and happiness, not to mention the good food. Thank you, Beth. I shall never forget how he loved to make up rhymes, many of which my mother sent to the Cheel in the Daily Dispatch, and which were often published, much to Kingsley's horror, as he didn't know that Mom had done this, and only found out when he read it in the Daily Dispatch. He had a good command of the English language from a very early age, and as a matter of fact, he even developed a private newspaper which was only distributed to the family at a cost of a tikkie, which is 3 cents per copy. This was known as the Village Echo, and contained the news of the family, Amalinda community, jokes, of course, and a hand-drawn cartoon. It only consisted of 2 pages and was duplicated on a gelatine type thing, what we would today call a printer of sorts. One other thing about my brother is that he didn't like arguments, so he would rather shut up than continue in something that was not going to be resolved anyway. And this is what is known as wisdom, of which he had plenty. So of course he was the favorite in the family, and because I was so proud of my brother, it didn't bother me in the least. I shall miss his sense of humor and all the happy moments we had together. Lots of laughs, as you can imagine. In fact, there was never a dull moment. Kingsley and Beth are an example to many of us, as their love for each other was pretty obvious. I shall miss you, dear Kingsley, and must thank you and Beth for putting up with me after my grief of losing my dear Fred. We shared so many things over the years, so you'll be surely missed by all who knew him. So, rest in peace, dear Kiki, and know that you will never be forgotten. Your loving sister, Betty. I would now like to call on Victoria Crossley, Kingsley and Beth's oldest granddaughter, Corin's daughter.
Hello everybody. Kingsley John. The 21st of October was by far the most difficult and painful day I've experienced in my life so far. Today, as I attempt to put into words who Kiki was and what he meant to me, will be the second most difficult day. I read somewhere once that grief is just love with no place to go. Kiki was, and still is, so unbelievably loved. Every tear shed today will serve as a reminder of the love we all have for Kingsley John Kingon. To me, Kiki was meant to outlive us all, as invincible heroes always do. He was the youngest 87-year-old I'd ever met. He was smart beyond comparison, he was sharp and he was funny, though I must admit the combination of his brains and sense of humor did often mean that his jokes went right over my head. The other day, my Uncle Roy, on my dad's side of the family, said if someone wanted to know what an honest man looked like, he would tell them to look at Kingsley Kingon. Kingsley's fine character was seen by all who met him. He had integrity like no other. He stood up for what he believed in, and he always did right by others. There is so much to learn from the way Kiki lived his life. I never once heard him express that he wanted anything. He always seemed content with what he had, and he never wished for a life of excess. This feels like a big page to take out of the metaphorical book that is Kingsley's life. Kiki was a devoted grandfather. I loved the fact that we weren't allowed to call him Grandpa, as he was far too young for such a title. He always had time for his grandchildren, and always met us with patience and generosity of both energy and time. The love that my grandparents have for each other has been the foundation for the home they created together for my mom, Karen, my uncle Ian, and my aunt Ingrid. With a foundation as strong as their love, it's no wonder they raised 3 of the best human beings I know. Their relationship will forever be a benchmark to me for what a relationship should be like. To my great auntie Betty, I can't imagine what it feels like to grieve the loss of your beloved brother. I know how much you love and adored Kiki, so moving forward, I will be holding you in my thoughts and my heart always. To my amazing grandmother, Beth, I am in awe at the strength you've shown over the last 2.5 months. I know that the road ahead is not going to be easy without Kiki by your side, holding your hand as he always did. I know our hands will never fit the same as Kiki's once did in yours, but we will always be waiting with our arms stretched out, ready to take your hand whenever you're in need. Never forget that you are loved and supported by so many. And to you, Kiki, the humblest hero I ever knew, I know that you are walking amongst legends, heroes, philosophers and kings, guiding us from afar whilst forever remaining close to our hearts. Thank you.
Ingi, would you like to come out? Don't.
I've almost, and by the way, I don't have COVID. I just wanted to clear that up. I know I looked like I was going to die of coughing, but I don't, post-COVID. I almost felt like I wanted to clap for all of those speeches. So thank you for everything that you've all done and contributed to today and those speeches. These are my backups. The familiarity of arriving home, knowing exactly how the key slots into the front door, the way the gate opens, and the full-length mirror that greets me warmly as I walk into 19 Sinclair Avenue, is a feeling I've known for years. Normally, when I arrive home, my dad is sitting in the lounge with the TV on, watching the Springboks or Proteas playing, with a cappuccino or beer next to him, depending on the time of day. Sitting next to him, you would find my mom, and wedged between them, a large golden Labrador. There would be a newspaper folded in half as he finishes off the Dispatch cryptic crossword, and the two grandfather clocks marking time in the background. The rhythm and heartbeat of our home will never be the same without my beloved dad, or Kiki as he's known to all the grandchildren. He said that he was too young to be called Grandpa. I think that was the secret to my dad's success. He never thought of himself as old. I bumped into Richard Tebbit the other day and he said to me, whenever I saw your dad, he was in the prime of his life, whether he was 60, 70 or 80. I love that. I remember I phoned home a year or two ago and I asked my mom if I could speak to my dad. I probably needed help with maths or apostrophes. She told me he was out. It was very unusual for my folks not to be together. So I said to her, where is he? She said, oh, he's gone to drive the old people. These old people were probably 10 years younger than their chauffeur. He stayed young in mind and spirit his whole life. Corin, Ian and I grew up in a home filled with so much love and laughter. Meals were always eaten at the table, and if my dad arrived home late from work and we had to wait for dinner, we'd all put our serviettes on our heads as a sign of disapproval. This lightness, banter and laughter stemmed from my dad's wicked sense of humour and play on words. A couple of things come to mind are focused around his world-famous poikies. Comments like, this is the worst meat but bloody well cooked, were said so often that we could almost preempt them. Or, this is the best food I've ever had in my whole mouth. There are so many long ago memories that have slipped into my awareness since that fateful day in October when we were all living at home and we used to go have slipped into my awareness since that fateful day in October, full stop. I don't want him to haunt me if I don't do that right. When we were all living at home, we used to go away most school holidays. We would be sleeping, others would be sleeping, and my dad and I would sing and harmonize to Jackson Browne. One of the songs we both loved, and were pretty good at, if I'm honest, was called Missing Persons. I was going to play it today, but definitely thought it would do me in. On a lighter note, we were driving, and I said to my dad, I would hate to have been the guy who'd come and had to stick the cat's eyes on the road. And without skipping a beat, my dad said he'd hate to be the guy who has to come and turn them on every night. It's the thoughts and comments that have emerged over the last couple of months that have touched us so deeply. People have commented about my dad's integrity and his ability to choose what's right and not what's easy. I've always been proud to be a Kingon, especially if people asked, "Are you Kingsley Kingon's daughter?" I felt like I mattered, based on the fact that he was honourable. I loved the way he batted for the underdog. He was open to new ideas and ways of thinking. I remember Wendy Woods telling me that everyone was very dismissive of feminism when it started rearing its head. And my dad said to her, sat next to her and said to her, "Tell me about this feminism story." My dad's appetite for knowledge started at an early age. On the first day of the school term, when he was given his textbooks, he would race home and read them cover to cover. Who even does that? Kingsley John Kingon did that. He learned to speak Xhosa before English, played the piano by ear, and read more ferociously than anyone I've ever met, even you, Suze. Upon meeting him for the first time, you would think he had a math science brain, but moments later you would be second-guessing yourself and thinking, no, he's more orientated towards history and languages. It was like living with Google before Google existed. Perhaps having a dad as intelligent as Kingsley made me a bit lazy. Sash and Dylan would ask me something, and without batting an eyelid, I would say, "Call Kiki." I could go on and on about my dad's mind, his brain, his intellectual brilliance, but it was his integrity and the way he treated people that stands out for me the most when I think of my dad. I've realized he had the ability to breakfast with a king, lunch with a prince, and dine with a pauper. He would find them equally interesting and never judge them on their wealth or poverty, but rather what they offered to the conversation and the table of life. I have every self-help book ever written. My dad would laugh when he would look at my bookshelf. He was so comfortable in my skin, he never needed to know how to heal your self-esteem in 5 easy steps, or how could we fast-track our journey of self-love. He knew what he loved in life, and he walked to the tune of his own drummer. What my dad loved most was my mom, followed closely by Karen, Ian, Kim, the grandchildren, and his most favourite child, me. This is why I spoke last, Karen and Ian. In all seriousness, I had the privilege of being witness to what a love affair of a lifetime looks like. I have a photograph taken of my parents in Dubai, walking around the Dubai Expo, holding hands. That's the way they rolled, always together, always holding hands, and together they created the most extraordinary environment for us to all grow up in. Their love is so strong that at the accident, all my mom was worried about was my dad. She got out and walked with a broken pelvis, 8 broken ribs, and said to the paramedics, "I'm fine, please see to my husband." He was and always will be the love of her life. My dad was always in my corner. He had my back. I will love him and miss him forever. My dad had 1 son, Ian, and 2 daughters, Karen and Car Ingrid. It drove me bonkers that I was Car Ingrid. And when he died on that fateful day, on the 21st of October, I knew the world and our lives would never be the same again. What I would do to hear my dad call me Car Ingrid just one more time. Hamburgertli, Dad, I love you.
We are going to hear from Beth, and Victoria is going to read that tribute.
Hello again. So this is from my lovely gran. How to say farewell to my beloved Kiki, my very best friend, my soulmate, and the love of my life since I was 18. We had a very special marriage and a shared love that enabled us to bring up 3 amazing children. We built a lifetime of wonderful memories together, saw our children mature into the fantastic adults that they are today. We holidayed to many overseas places and always to many overseas places, always holding hands and always together. We worked together for 41 years, and I think that must say something about our mutual love and respect for each other. I will miss you forever, my beloved Kiki, my one and only, never wrong, always right. Thank you for 61 wonderful years of marriage and a lifetime of happiness and love. We were holding hands in the back of the Uber and were talking about our wonderful holiday in Dubai when the accident took place. You will be the one and only love of my life.
All right. We've got a final some footage that's going to be shown from Beck.
In good times and bad times, in poverty and wealth. We've survived all the bad times. Super one.